Hey everyone, welcome back to SparkDrive. Today I'm doing a follow-up to my last video. This is a 6-month update on my Hyundai Ioniq 5 and how my first service went. Now, some of the content in this video overlaps with the 5,000 mile update, but I promise if you've seen the last video, you're going to want to stick around. Let's go. First, let's talk about my range that I've experienced here in Georgia. When I first got the car, I drove 350 miles to Alabama to pick up the car. After that, I drove about 2,800 miles and went on a road trip with various destinations. This caused my estimated range to drop to about 200 miles of range, as I was not driving lower than the speed limit and at the speed limit of 70 miles per hour. With this, I also drove in sport mode and had a little too much fun with the instant acceleration when I first got the car. Once I drove on local roads with a mix of highway for a couple months, I was able to get around 300 to 330 miles of range, and this has been my experience till today. Granted, I probably did drive like a grandma, super slow, not really using the instant acceleration all that much, but it helps out with the range. With that, I typically drive on eco mode with level 3 regen, which is known to get you the highest possible range. I know everyone won't have the same experience as the weather is dropping in temperature in most of the country as well as Canada. I do expect my range to drop in a few months once the temperature drops here in Georgia, but I was lucky enough to get the car in June, so I didn't have to experience that in addition to worrying about being a new electric car owner in terms of range anxiety. Next, let's jump into charging. When I first got the car, I would exclusively charge at Electrify America. With the Ioniq 5, you get 2 years of free, unlimited 30-minute sessions, so I thought may as well take advantage of it and use that. As of the last month or two, I would either charge at home or at Electrify America charging station, depending on how much time I had. It's definitely a better experience charging at home, waking up with a charge, rather than having to figure out when to go to a charging station and fit that into your schedule. During my Electrify America charging, my experience was amazing at first, but as of recently, the last few trips that I made to Electrify America have been a little worse. About 2 weeks ago, I made a video on this, and you could watch it by hitting the I in the top right hand corner after you're done with this video, or there'll be a link in the description. But in summary, other than those few negative experiences, Electrify America has been very positive. Now, let's jump on the car side of things. Since my rear-wheel drive variant of the Ioniq 5 does not have a heat pump for the battery, it'll take longer to charge at charging stations as it does not have battery preconditioning. The 2023 model year Ioniq 5s do have preconditioning, which is good for new customers looking to purchase an Ioniq 5. Also, I've had an issue with the charging door not opening when you hit the 5 little dots that are on the charge door. I would always have to use the key to open up the charge door, but closing it, there was no issues. When I would charge at home, I'm only using the included charger, which charges at 120 volts, as there's no 240 volt plug in my garage. The 120 volt plug does take about 30 to 40 hours to charge when you have 10 to 20% of battery to get you back up to 80%, which this might not be viable for most people, and they may have to put in a 240 volt plug in their garage. Next up, let's talk about how the paint is doing after 5,000 miles. When on highways, there have been plenty of times where a rock is launched in the air from the vehicle in front of me, and it hits my car and I have a small heart attack. I always think whenever a rock is going to hit the bumper or even the hood or the windshield, it's going to damage something. But in my experience, it's been very positive with the paint and the exterior of the car. I know at least 2 or 3 rocks have hit my front windshield and it's not cracked it. I do know when getting a crack on your windshield, it's all luck, but I'm happy to say in my experience, it has not happened. Other than that, the worst thing that I've had in front of my car is bugs, and those came out really easily with a power washer and some microfiber cloths. In terms of my tires, they've been getting dirtier than I've noticed in other cars. They were browning around the edges, but I was able to buy some tire cleaner and getting them looking nice and clean. Since we're talking about how dirty tires get, let's move on to the rear windshield. I tell you, there is no point of a rear windshield on this car. It gets dirty so quickly and has no rear wiper, so I've been accustomed to using my rear view mirrors or the camera. I very rarely look out the rear windshield. A quick note on the door handles, as they are motorized, and I do know up north whenever it gets cold and ice forms on the door handles, it may be problematic, but based on what I've read online, there's no issues with that. The one negative experience that I've had with the door handles included the front passenger side door handle not pulling out when I first bought the car. So you would unlock it, nothing would happen with the door handle, but you were still able to open the door just fine. This is fixed over time and currently works fine. Moving on to the interior, this car has a lot of space inside the cabin, and at 6'5", it's amazing. If I ever have rear passengers, I don't need to adjust my seat forward. I can stay comfortable at my current driving position, and they are in the rear seat behind me with more than enough room, especially legroom. And when you open the trunk, it also has a lot of room to hold luggage, various items when doing road trips or traveling, which is great. The only downside with cargo space in this car is the frunk. There's only enough room in the frunk for a charging cable and maybe the tire mobility kit, which they include as this car has no spare tire. Next up, let's move on to the audio in this car. And the sound system in this vehicle is just not that great. I have turned it to the best settings I could in the infotainment system and added an equalizer in my music player on my phone, but I've seen so much better from other vehicles with this same speaker layout. And at a $50,000 price tag, you would really expect something with higher quality, especially from the audio side of things. And that's one thing I may change in this car if I keep it long term, is switching out the door speakers for something that has a little more depth. I really hope they do fix this with future versions of the Ioniq 5, maybe in the 2024 or even in the Ioniq 6. Last thing I want to talk about is the built-in software, and all I could say is it works. It works well, it works great, and I can't complain. When I want to use maps, I do use Apple CarPlay, and that works great as well, but if I ever need to switch between climate and Apple CarPlay, it's very easy by hitting the climate control button, adjusting the temperature however I need it, and hitting the climate button again to send you back into CarPlay. Now, let's get into the service and what happened there. All new Hyundais come with 3 years of free maintenance included, so I knew I wasn't going to have to pay anything for the service. I told them about my tailgate rattling when I go over bumps, and once the service was complete, after about 2 hours, they told me they addressed the issue and there shouldn't be any problems with the tailgate rattling anymore. And when driving home from the service center, I did notice that the tailgate did not rattle anymore, which is good. I know not all dealers are great, but this dealer ended up being really good and it got done fairly quick. I know 2 hours is a lot, but it was the week of Christmas and everyone's trying to get their vehicles serviced before they go on their road trips to see family. With that, thank you so much for watching this week's video. If you did enjoy, please leave a like and do consider subscribing. We do try to release content every single week for you. Peace.